India's view of the Indo-Pacific is that this is an inclusive space, in that we've got to look at the interests of multiple stakeholders. And in that, we've reached out to a number of countries. In Russia, there seems to be limited enthusiasm for the concept of the Indo-Pacific. Now, of course, it's growing perhaps because of a perceived clash with the idea of Eurasia or Greater Eurasia. This is a space that Russia dominates Eurasia, and therefore a lot of attention has been given onto Eurasia. But I would think that the Indo-Pacific region is really the maritime space that rims the Eurasian continent. And there's so much that India and Russia can do together in this space. One of the things that bothers India a little bit is increased Chinese presence in the Pacific as also the Indian Ocean region. So we know of the fact that the Chinese have an assertive, aggressive strategy in the South China Sea. But growingly, we are seeing more of Chinese warships, Chinese submarines come into the Indian Ocean region. What we need is a partnership with Russia to have a kind of a counter presence in both the Indian Ocean and the Pacific, to create a balance of forces, not to counter China or to contain China. China is too big, it's a global player, you can't contain China, but to maintain a sort of balance of power, so that we're assured about the fact that the Chinese will not act in ways that would be detrimental to India's interests. But beyond traditional security concerns, I think there's a huge potential for India and Russia to act together in the non-traditional domain. For instance, let's look at anti-piracy, terrorism, things like trafficking, overfishing. Coast guards can cooperate together. Climate change happening, migration control, a lot of these areas that interest Indian Ocean states and states in the Asia Pacific. These are countries that are pointing to the fact that we need to have partnerships in the non-traditional maritime domain to counter these challenges beyond just looking at traditional actors. So I would say that both on the traditional front, second on the non-traditional front, and have a robust partnership with regard to defense technology. We would like the Russians to help us in the Make in India plan. We would like to co-partner with partner in the co-development of technology and defense equipment. And I see a great big horizon out there for India and Russia to cooperate on these issues. On the maritime sphere, so I can tell you what's happening in the maritime domain is that the big debates that are happening are around increasing capacity building. For instance, India calls itself a net security provider in the Indian Ocean region. It calls itself a first responder to challenges. So if a tsunami happens or if a cyclone happens and populations of different countries are affected, it's the Indian Navy that goes out there to help them. We ourselves suffer from a capacity crunch. Our Navy is developed, but it is not so developed that it can provide all the assistance by itself. We need to build the capacities of smaller navies, smaller forces, as also cooperate on issues like blue economy. And there I think we need the Russian assistance, because the Russians over a period of time have really developed those skills. They have the technology and the capability that they can be partners to India in developing this capacity among the smaller states. So going into the future, India would like to diversify this discussion, broaden this discussion that it has with Russia beyond just arms trade issues, to look at more operational cooperation, more Navy-to-Navy engagement, more capacity building in these places, building of institutions in this area, to sort of get Russia into the mainstream of maritime security in the Indo-Pacific region. I think that would be a great step forward to legitimize Russia's stakes in this broader Asian space.